Imagine this. I play a throwing knife and equip it to my creature. I attack and target your tapped 2/2 grizzly bear with the ability. You've got a giant growth in your hand that could keep it alive. What do? Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and today I'm going to tell you about something relatively new to Magic and often misunderstood. Unless you know exactly what you're looking for, you're going to miss it on cards, and knowing it can greatly change how you play. Got your answer in mind to that opening scenario? All right then, let's go. So, are you saving your creature or not? Well, here's the problem. If you don't cast your giant growth, your opponent can choose to sacrifice the knife to kill the creature, and you can't respond to it. If you do cast the giant growth, your opponent can choose to not sacrifice the knife, in which case you've more or less tossed your giant growth into the graveyard. It works like this. When a creature equipped by throwing knife attacks, you choose a target immediately, regardless of if you're going to sacrifice it or not. If there's a target that an ability has, you need to choose the target when the ability triggers. So regardless of if you actually intend to use the throwing knife, you need to pick a target. As the ability resolves, during a time nobody can cast spells, you can choose to sacrifice the throwing knife and deal the damage. And if you do, then the damage will be dealt, and that decision can't be responded to. This is all a little strange. One of the first big things you learn about Magic after you grasp the basics is that there's always a chance to respond to a spell or ability. I cast Lightning Bolt, you cast Giant Growth. I tap a Prodigal Sorcerer to kill your Zakura Tribe Elder, you can respond by sacrificing it for a land. You make the decision to do something, and then the other player can make a decision to respond. But Throwing Knife takes that moment out of the equation. The Throwing Knife player gets the final say, which is pretty atypical. But this isn't anything new. It's been on Magic cards for ages. You can target creatures with Flame Blast Dragon and then not pay if they sacrifice it in response, threaten to steal a creature with Riptide Entrancer, and even Floral Spasm from Legends puts your opponent in this quandary. Well, it would if Floral Spasm could ever make up its mind about if it's going to destroy that artifact. We're all waiting on you, Floral Spasm. But Throwing Knife got us talking about just how unintuitive this was. And with Amonkhet in 2017, it was time to try something new. Something that goes by the technical name Reflexive Trigger. Let's take a look at Heart-Piercer Manticore. It says, when Heart-Piercer Manticore enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, Heart-Piercer Manticore deals damage equal to that creature's power to target creature or player. Did you notice anything different? Okay, if you said target creature or player, you're technically correct, and also you're smarmy. This card was updated to say to any target with that templating change a few years ago. But the real interesting point here is that when you do. It doesn't say if you do, it says when. And that single word means a world of difference. In Magic, when is a word that begins a triggered ability, and spells or abilities can set them up for later. For example, take a look at Graceful Reprieve. It does nothing when you cast it, but later in the turn when the creature dies, the game remembers this spell was cast, and a trigger that can be responded to goes onto the stack to return that creature to the battlefield. Therefore, it also stood to reason that we could make a new kind of conditional ability work within the rules. Well, maybe with some slight rules nudging. One that used when instead of if, and that did go on the stack. So here's how the Manticore works. You play it and you choose no targets right away. You're simply given the option to sacrifice a creature when the ability resolves. If you opt that yes, you do want to sacrifice a creature, the creature is sacrificed and then the win ability triggers. At this point, you choose a target for it, and your opponent knows what creature you've sacrificed and that the damage is for sure coming. Without that, you wouldn't know what creature they were sacrificing or if you were going to even sacrifice a creature at all. A subtle but huge difference. And as it turns out, this change came just in time, because Amonkhet's Exert mechanic really wanted to do this, so there was a window to respond to the Exert abilities. Before we got to this wording using Reflexive Triggers, the Exert cards all read much different and with 2 lines. To use Glorybringer as an example, it was something like, you may exert Glorybringer as it attacks, then a line break, and whenever Glorybringer becomes exerted, it deals 4 damage to target non-dragon creature an opponent controls. The printed wording is much easier to read. I also have always hated if you do on a personal level for some classes of cards because they confuse some players as well. Promise of Boonray is a great example. It's important it says if you do so that 3 creatures dying doesn't give you 12 tokens. But there is no choice here. You must sacrifice it. But if you do makes it read like there is a choice. Sort of a why would it say if you do if there wasn't a choice involved situation. We're not going to go back and errata old cards to change their functionality here, but I'm glad that future cards could use when you do to be a little more clear. For example, on the common sacrifice lands in Streets of New Capenna, an if you do would be a little more head scratching. Another good use for this is with cards where you want to choose the target after the first half of the ability resolves. A great recent example is Flitting Gorilla. This is a when you do reflexive trigger. Without it, you would have to choose the creature or battle card you're targeting when the ability is put onto the stack before you mill 2 cards. But now it waits for you to mill the 2 cards, and then when you do, you select what you're putting on top. This matches how most people think the card works, so it's a great way to line up Magic with player expectations, which is always a huge win. Since Amonkhet, we've gotten more and more comfortable with this wording. From Ancestral Katana, to Minsk and Boo, to Cabal Therapist, to even Spare Dagger, learning from Throwing Knife's errors, there's now plenty of these in Magic and more to come. Now, we're not getting rid of if you do. There are still plenty. It's just for cases where your opponent won't commonly be wondering if it's happening or not when the ability triggers. Bloodfeather Phoenix in March of the Machine still leaves whether or not you're going to pay a red mana a mystery while the ability is on the stack, even though that won't meaningfully come up very often. But if you're going to do something like optionally sacrifice a creature, make a choice about something involving a stat increasing mid-ability, or want the first part of the ability to happen before a target is chosen on the second, then yeah, you can expect to see a when you do. It's swapping a single small word, but it makes a tremendous difference. And now, hopefully you can keep an eye out for it as you look through cards and sets as well. What do you think? Do you like this direction? Do you wish all abilities were like this? Did you even know there was a difference? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll talk with you again soon. And until next time, may you know when, not if, to make a play. You got this. Still Magic Online leagues to look at. The format of leagues is a little bit different. You play 5 matches each league, there's no downtime, and you want to finish fast so you can keep playing. From everything we can tell, naturally, these aggressive decks are very prominent in these leagues because they are a good fit for the structure. You can feel